Welcome back, pod people. My guest today is James Roberts, the writer, producer, creator, but not director of Here for Blood, a new supernatural home invasion action horror comedy about a babysitter who needs to protect their charge from folks who are trying to get in and abduct the kid, with the twist being that the babysitter is a professional wrestler. Here for Blood premieres on ScreamBox and in theaters on February 9th, 2024. Welcome to the show, James.
Oh, thank you for having me, Thomas.
So the first thing that jumped out to me about your connection with Here for Blood is that you are the writer, producer, and creator, but not director, which is an unusual combination of things to be. So tell me a bit about how that came about. Why did you not end up directing this?
Oh, well, so when the director Daniel reached out to me, we had a monumental task ahead of us. We had basically just a script. We had no other resources. We were literally starting from ground zero. So pulling together an independent film, especially in a community like ours that does not have a established film industry, it is a monumental task, and you can only wear so many hats, as they say. So
Certainly,
going to get financing and pulling together a crew, basically in the middle of nowhere, and getting the actors on board. It was not a one-man show. We had a really great team. My other co-producer, Jake Windat, we really all had to pull as one to kind of get this thing out of the starting gates. It was not an easy task.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you say that you made it in part of the world where there isn't a traditionally set up film industry. Where is that? Tell me a bit about that process.
Yeah, so we're based out of London, Ontario, Canada, which is
Okay.
halfway between Detroit and Toronto. So Toronto has a fantastic film industry, but where we're located, we don't really get much filming down here. It's just kind of in its beginning phases. We are starting to see some productions slowly make their way this far down and set up shop. But when we started this project, our city just started their film commission, and we talked to them, and we were both going through these very awkward growing pains, trying to figure out what does filming here look like, what resources do we have at our disposal. We don't have a ton of experienced crew, so it was kind of like you have to really look around and try to put together a reliable team and figure out what making a film looks like here. And it was definitely an interesting experience for us.
Okay, yeah, that making a cool action horror comedy movie in the middle of nowhere, Canada, reminds me a lot of the creation of Wolf Cop.
Mm-hmm.
So excellent. I'm glad to see more small towns getting in on film creation. I just interviewed several people in small town Louisiana,
Nice.
and I love to see how much more accessible filmmaking has become. So you wrote it. You said you started out with just a script.
Mm-hmm.
The last time that I interviewed the writer of a movie, it was Samuel Morrison for By Deception, and he was actually quite upset with how the movie turned out, that the way that he pictured things in his mind was very different from the way that it ended up on the screen. So I'm curious, how similar was what you pictured in your mind when writing the script to the end product, and in particular, the fight choreography, the fight scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy with how it turned out. My fingerprints are definitely in some of the fight scenes and stuff. We had Sean Roberts, our lead actor. He did all his own stunts in the movie. So every time his character gets hit or hits the ground, that's Sean. Really, much like a real pro wrestler, taking those bumps and going through the agony of that character. So we did have Sean work with a professional wrestler named Tyson Dukes, who is a legendary Canadian professional wrestler. And Tyson gave Sean a crash course in pro wrestling. And we worked with a really amazing stunt coordinator named Anthony Ferry. And a lot of it, especially in independent filmmaking, it's on the fly. So, certain things happen. Oh, it's, especially in Canada. Hey guys, it's freezing out there tonight. You got to go, you got to go fight a guy outside in a t-shirt. It's like, let's get it done. Let's make it look as cool as we can. And let's, covered in fake blood too. That stuff gets pretty hard and cold and icy on your skin after a while. So,
Indeed.
we've really, and the cast that played our villains, it really did suffer for the art that a lot of the fight scenes. So it was a really great experience, and I'm really happy. I think when I wrote the script, I wanted this to be a essentially a feel good movie, which I know sounds kind of silly for a horror movie, but I want people to feel good and cheer for the good guys and boo the bad guys, much like a wrestling match, and leave feeling happy. And from the feedback I've gotten so far, I think we accomplished that.
Yeah, I'd say Sean's character is very much a baby face in this. He's might stumble on saying the right thing at a moment or two, but he always has everyone's best interest in heart, and he never does anything that's really like mean or anything like that. So yeah. Yeah, I think that worked quite well, and I enjoyed the contrast between him as the enormous bulky good guy and then the scrawny little jerk stepfather who punches him and hurts his hand, but still managed to be like a viable threat because they've got the whole cult.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So tell me, sorry, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just said spoiler alert. Anybody listening, this is a bit of a spoiler alert.
Yeah, this although this will be coming out shortly before the movie is released, in general, this podcast is intended more as okay, you've seen the movie, now let's learn a bit about the creative process behind it.
Perfect.
So tell me a bit about your connection to wrestling.
So I was an independent professional wrestler. I trained under Tyson Dukes, who is also featured in the movie in the opening wrestling scene against Sean. And I spent a number of years wrestling around, being broke, getting beat up in front of sometimes 5 people, sometimes 100. You never knew where you were, depending on where you went. So I really understand the lifestyle and the mentality and the struggles of a professional wrestler. Because at the end of the day, you're an independent artist, you're an independent contractor. You have to travel around and make the towns, and it's not only do you have to put on a show for the audience, but people say, oh, pro wrestling's fake. Well, gravity's not fake. When you have a 300-pound guy body slamming you, you feel that your body it takes its toll. You don't often get to sleep a lot, especially if you have to drive. In Canada, you can drive 10 hours just to go wrestle somewhere. You know what I mean? Like we have a lot of big open spaces and only so many viable areas to wrestle in. So I really understood, the struggles of a character like Tom, because I lived it, and as a writer, screenwriter, filmmaker, I understand that there's highs and lows. And when we meet this character, he's kind of at a low, money's tight, and that's why he agrees to take the babysitting job, because they need the cash.
Yeah. I was going to say the part at the beginning where we're like, okay, we're introducing the characters. All right, watching them do the professional wrestling. He's good at it. Cool. And then he goes and he gets paid and he gets $20 for an evening of wrestling.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, man, that's definitely illegal, right? Like that's well below minimum wage.
But there's no rules. It's like I've wrestled places where they go, you get exposure. You know what I mean? And if you turn it down, people tell you they say, oh, he's got a bad attitude. There's still a very old school mentality of you have to pay your dues. And a lot of wrestlers for years would wrestle for no money, and I'm talking about like the old territory days, in the '70s, and etc. You'd have to go and they just beat the crap out of you, and then they wouldn't pay you. So it's not as bad as it used to be, obviously, but I've wrestled for free plenty of times, and if I got $20, wow, wasn't I lucky? So it's really not that far fetched. A lot of
Wow.
independent wrestlers, once you establish yourself as a name, you can start to get a little bit more money, but it's not easy out there. It's tough tough sledding.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't disputing that it's a real thing that
Mm,
happens. I definitely, I've friends who I like you are former indie wrestlers.
mhm.
Um, I'm questioning whether it's legal or not. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think it's illegal. I just
okay,
I don't think
all
there's any
right,
there's no governing body. There's no union. There's nothing like that.
interesting.
So yeah, it's just like you know,
Yeah,
show up or don't. You don't have to do it, I guess. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But
Yeah, something that I found interesting about this and that opening scene is it establishes our character, our lead, as sort of an underdog, which is kind of hard to do given how absolutely enormous Sean Roberts is. Dude is huge, and so trying to picture him as anything other than the like unstoppable Terminator type is a little difficult, but setting him up as, oh, he's poor, he's taking this job that he wouldn't do otherwise because he's poor. And one thing that I really liked was in the very first scene where he is in an actual fight. The first thing that happens is he gets cut, which is something that I think a lot of these more action-oriented films, especially in the modern era of like really big egos, like Dwayne Johnson and
mhm.
Vin Diesel, you often have characters who seem untouchable. But the fact that we open with that, that's the first time where we see him in a real fight, he actually gets hurt, really made me go, oh, okay, this might not just be him slaughtering people for an hour. There might be more to this, which I thought was really interesting. So, um, how much was designing the fights in the movie similar to or different from designing a fight in a professional wrestling match?
I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah, so definitely when I was writing in, there's specific damage he takes over the movie. He gets stabbed, he gets cut. There's those, you know, lumps and bumps he takes, and
That foot
you know,
injury, oof.
yeah. So much like a pro wrestling match, they have the section of the match which they call the heat, which is where the heel beats up on the baby face, and then the baby face, through sheer will and determination, battles back and overcomes or succumbs to the evil. So that was kind of, the idea behind our hero here is he never loses his will to fight, but he definitely takes his lumps and take some damage over the course of the movie. And that was, he doesn't quit. That's what we wanted. Somebody who wouldn't wasn't going to give up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, he definitely has a lot of grit and pushing through. Um, so, were you involved in the makeup and the props, or like hiring the people who did that sort of stuff at all? Because I have questions about some of that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I was. We reached out to the butcher shop. They're good friends of my other producer, Jacob Windat. I was aware of their work, and they're great guys. We have gone down to their shop, and you'll crack a couple beers, and you can talk about practical effects and prosthetics with those guys for hours. They have an incredible space full of all their gore gags and creature suits from other films, and it's definitely like it's just if you're a horror fan like I am who loves practical effects, it's basically heaven. They'll throw on a movie on the TV there, and your Reanimator or something like that's playing in the background as you're just looking at this wall of monsters and gore, and it's just such a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I thought that the special effects in general were quite good and effective. It seemed like almost all of it was practical effects, with the special effects really being just for some glow, or some, excuse me, the visual effects just being for some glow things like glowing eyes, portal,
Yeah, yeah.
etc. Yeah, so that's was my impression correct there, pretty much?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We wanted to keep it as practical as we could. So, the bulk of the effects, like the digital effects we used, were just to add, some glowing eyes and stuff, just things like that, because contact lenses get incredibly expensive, and you have to hire a special technician to put in, any kind of wild contacts. So we went the digital route to kind of, when the cult flips to be demonic, um, just to add that extra level to show they'd really changed. The practical effects, we did change their faces with some. We used some like latex appliances over their
Prosthetics,
face,
yeah.
yeah, to really make them look different. And then we just enhanced, some of the stuff, just with like cracks glowing between their skin and their eyes, just to bring it up to another level. And but yeah, in terms of the like, the blood and violence, we wanted to keep it as practical as we could.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the ultimate effect of almost all of it was quite realistic. The one part where I was a little thrown was, and again, getting back more into spoilers, the possessed head of D. Snyder,
Yeah.
uh, which looked to like, the one thing that really jumped out at me in that is that, like, there isn't a throat there. It's just a
Yeah.
solid wall at the back of the mouth.
Mhm.
So what was the design process there? Was it intentionally meant to look sillier, or?
Yeah, I mean it's a puppet, So we've always said there's going
Of
to be
course.
people that love puppets, and there's going to be people that hate puppets. So if you go, that's stupid, that's a puppet, it's like, yeah, it's a puppet. It's not a real severed head. So we wanted to have a kind of an old school puppet in the movie. So we had the head made by the butcher shop, and we had a puppeteer. And yeah, it's like you either dig at puppets, or you go, oh, that's stupid, that's a puppet. You know what I mean? So it was fun. Meant to be not taken, too seriously. It's not supposed to scare anybody. It's just fun. It's a severed puppet head. It's just, we really wanted it to be. It's very tongue in cheek and campy by design.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I Everything else was sort of riding that line a
Mhm.
bit more finely, and then this was thoroughly in the camp section. And so I was like, all
Yeah.
right, I want to know the story there. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Um, so as I said, severed head of D. Snyder. It's not D. Snyder in the movie. The character is like an ancient cultist, but it is the voice of D. Snyder providing
Yes.
the
Yeah.
character. So tell me how that came about.
So Jacob Windat, my fine producing partner on the film, started a um, rock and roll convention here in town, and one of his first guests he booked was Dee Snider. So he had, Dee's agent's contact, and when we were discussing, getting a voice for the head, we said, this is like a heavy metal wrestling horror movie. We've got, wrestlers in it. We've got the horror in it. We just need some more heavy metal. So he goes, why don't we ask Dee Snider? And we just reached out and we just asked, and he agreed to do it. And Dee, admitted he's got a soft spot for independent horror films, and having starred in and directed Strangeland himself. So he just based, like, we're so grateful to have him. It was really surreal because you're talking to somebody who's just always been in the pop culture zeitgeist as long as I've been alive. You know what I mean? Just, seeing him in like Pee Wee's Big Adventure and music videos when I was a kid, and now you're just like talking to this guy and he's doing the voice of a severed head puppet for your movie. It was pretty surreal, and he was very generous with his time and very kind and supportive of the project. So we were so grateful to get him on board. And it was just, we had the audacity to ask. That was it.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that he's so enthusiastic about that. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So your lead character is played by Sean Roberts, who is a fairly established actor. He's been around
Mhm.
for a while. Um, when I first saw him, it's been a while since I've seen something that he was in. I think the last thing was probably Resident Evil Afterlife back in 2010. Um, dude got huge. And when I saw him, I did not recognize him. I thought, oh, okay, they cast some professional wrestler for this role. Uh, uh, did you have him in mind when you wrote the script? Were you expecting to cast some indie wrestler? How did he end up getting the part?
Well, we weren't really sure, that was there was two parts we were nervous about, which was the character of Grace, the little girl, and
Hmm.
the wrestler, because you need somebody who's big enough and believable enough that they can be the lead, and then the last thing you want in any horror movie is a really annoying little kid where the audience is going, "Man, I hope they die," because oh my god. So um, luckily we found Maya Miseljedic, who played Grace, and she was such a talent and such a pro, and we were very blessed. But Sean, we were discussing the part with the butcher shop, our special effects studio, and they're like, "Have you ever thought about Sean Roberts?" And I'm like, "No way! There's no way he'd do it." The guy's been in big movies. Like, why would he consider this? And they go, "Well, just ask." And again, we just had the audacity to ask. We contacted his agent. He said, "Send us the script." Sean read it and liked it, and he came on board. So it was kind of like another just. Sometimes you just ask, and just whether you're stupid enough or brave enough, to just ask somebody. Sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that that has worked out for you repeatedly. Do you have any more stories of people that you just asked for this movie that ended up working on it, or?
Well, I mean, from the beginning, when we sat down and we kind of came up with a plan, like how are we going to make this thing?
Hmm.
We kind of took the Sam Raimi old school style that he did with Evil Dead, where you just knock on doors and you pitch it, and that's what we did. We
Okay,
pitched it. We pitched it to independent investors, and it was as we went on, your pitch gets more and more polished, and you start having more and more confidence as you're talking, and those
of
results
course,
started to pay off. And yeah, we just kind of you have to take the no's, as they come. For every one yes, there's 200 no's. Nobody wants to invest in your little horror movie in a community that's got no film, industry, and
of
so
course.
we just had to kind of go out and pitch it and sell not only ourselves but the project, and bring it together. And yeah, it was the whole thing was just kind of um, really starting from ground zero. We had a script, and we
Yeah,
just had to keep building and keep building and keep building. And when Sean Roberts comes on board, people start to go, "Oh, you got Sean Roberts starring, okay." And then more actors will, want to come on board, and they'll start taking it a little more seriously. And then it was just kind of a bit of a snowball effect where once we got going, we just kept having to roll with everything and grow and adapt as things came to us. So
yeah, that's always the way. Um, I admit, before this interview, I thought that there was a decent chance that when I asked you how you got Sean Roberts on board, you were going to say, "Oh, he's my brother."
yeah, no, it's just a pure coincidence. We have the same last name, and yeah, there's no nepotism, no none of that. He was suggested to us, and it was like a real fingers crossed. Let's hope he even responds to us. And yeah, he's like it was awesome. He's a pro. You know what I mean? He's been
Excellent.
around. He knows his craft. He knows. It's just like, how do you find a guy who can carry a movie but then also looks like a pro wrestler? And it was like, oh, here's Sean.
Yeah,
Thank God. There's not a lot of guys that look like Sean and then can also have that charisma and that acting ability to carry a film. So we were lucky, lucky, lucky. Yeah.
yeah, he definitely does have the charisma. I I feel a little hesitant to say that he carried the film, because to me that implies that the rest of the film was bad and that it was just that. And I agree that if you had gotten a bad performer in that role, that would have ruined the movie. But
Yeah,
I do think that the rest of the movie also works quite well. And in particular, you pointed out Maya, the young girl who plays Grace. Uh, Excellent job as
yeah,
the little girl. Um, you mentioned how people don't like horror movies where there's an annoying little kid the whole time.
yeah.
Um, you definitely managed to avoid that. I just interviewed the writer director of The Fetch, which is a movie that I would describe as like The Babadook if the kid dies in the opening scene.
Okay.
So that interview will be coming out a bit after this one. Um, but yeah, your script seems like it has a lot of things in it that need to go exactly right in terms of casting and production in order to work. And so it seems like you got lucky, and certainly don't mean to downplay your efforts, but luck is also involved. Uh,
It's huge. Yeah, luck is most of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty important. So when you were doing the pre-production and getting ready to do filming, what were you most worried about?
Oh my goodness. Well, big one was COVID. Like we shot this in
Oh,
the
wow,
middle of
yeah,
the
okay.
pandemic, so
That
you
makes
know
sense.
nobody would insure you for COVID. So if you get COVID on an independent film and you got to shut down for 2 weeks, you're dead in the water. There's no way we'd be able to financially just bring everybody back. That house we shot in was an Airbnb we rented, so we had to it would have just been too many moving parts and it could have potentially been a disaster. So that was like constantly on the back of your mind. You know what I mean? That is one of the things that you're most worried about because one COVID case could topple the whole Jenga tower we were building of independent filmmaking. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I know in professional wrestling, the way that the choreography generally works is it's not every single specific move is planned out ahead of time. Instead, it's like, okay, we're going to have, like, I'm going to do this move to you at some point. You're going to do this move to me at some point, and it's going to end with me pinning you using this move.
Mhm.
So in this, so the point of that is that it allows for improvisation in the moment and happy
Mhm.
accidents to occur during the performance. Did you guys have any happy accidents like that, where something that you didn't expect to happen happened and it ended up being in the final movie?
Let me think. Um, well, a lot of times there's, when you're doing a lot of these practical effects, working on an independent budget, sometimes you got one shot. You got
Yes.
one shot. We got one of these. We got to take this guy's head off and hope it goes well. Or, a big one was there's a scene where one of the cultists gets his face slammed down on a burner, and we have an upshot through the burner of the skin melting off his face. We had no idea how that was going to turn out. We had one of those. You know what I mean? So we had to use like fingers crossed. So um, basically, there's a lot of you don't know how the blood's going to spray. You don't know
Right.
how, and we don't have time to fresh costume. Clean the actor. That 40 minutes later, bring them back. And try again. So uh, any blood spray or effect that happens in the movie was like it worked. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this is the
Yeah.
way it worked. Sometimes little funny things would happen, the way certain things would land, or the way blood would spray on somebody, and those were the most. I think those would stand out to me as the happy accidents. Like, oh, that looked kind of cool, and that accidentally hit our actor in the eye. The blood spray went right. Okay, that's kind of fun, or what have you. So, yeah, that was definitely it's do or die time. You know what I mean? This has to work, or we got to scrap it and try something else. So, yeah, we're pretty lucky.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you filmed this in a small community that doesn't have an established filmmaking base, and
Mhm.
this is your first feature film. Um, what is your plans, both for yourself and for the your fledgling film community there? What are you planning on doing next?
Well, I do have a script I'm just kind of finishing up now that I'd love to try and get going. Um, I'm really kind of optimistic about a lot of the growth I've seen here in our town. There are some productions starting to kind of come in. They'll do a day here, a day there. You know, some Apple TV shows came in and stuff. So it's growing, and I'd love to be a part of that growing community and try to create an infrastructure that people could use outside of you know Toronto, which is so expensive to just hotels, everything. Like in our town, you can close down a street for $50, But in Toronto, that's a Marvel movie if you want to close down a street. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You're not going to be able to. So there's lots of opportunity here, and yeah, I'd love to get another project going here and to keep building things up. And I'm really hopeful that Here for Blood connects with the audience we created it for, and just to keep growing and creating and doing what you love in life. That's the goal for everybody, I think.
excellent. So, as I mentioned earlier, Here for Blood is going to be on ScreamBox and in theaters on February 9th, which is to say 1 week after this episode goes live. Uh, how did that come about?
Oh yeah, well that's another example of the audacity to ask. We somebody sent us Brad Miska's email from Bloody Disgusting, and I just said, hey, here's we've done this festival and this festival, and would you like to take a look? And he said, yeah, and he watched it. He liked what he saw, and now we are, on ScreamBox and Bloody Disgusting's writing about us, which is as a lifelong horror fan, very like you're like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I was just saying to my girlfriend the other day, I'm like, I wish like my high school self could see this because I'd be like, no way, like that would be so exciting. So it's 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 lucky, it's miraculous, considering what we started with and all the struggles of an independent production, and I'm thrilled with how everybody pulled together to get this done, and we just I guess we were just bold enough to keep trying. So that would be my advice to anybody independently. Just try, just see what happens because you never know.
Excellent. So, is ScreamBox slash Bloody Disgusting, which are under the same sort of banner company of Cineverse,
Yeah.
are they also doing the theatrical distribution?
Yes, they are as well. Yeah, they're handling all the U.S. distribution for us.
What about Canada?
Not Canada, actually. We're trying to get Canada going. It's not as easy as the United States because we have a pretty small market up here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the adventure continues for me. This isn't. It's very nice and exciting that it's coming out, but I still have a ton of work to do and more people to talk to and more things to try and navigate this independent distribution. It's very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. For anyone listening who might be thinking, "Oh, this seems a little more fast-paced of a conversation than usual," that is because this is your first time doing a press junket day, and my first time being a part of the press junket for a
Yeah.
film. So we're fitting in what we can during our allotted time. Um, so this is as I mentioned earlier, this is your first time uh, writing a script for a feature film. I'm gonna guess you've made a bunch of shorts on your own before that. Is that true? Or
Yeah, I've made some shorts, I've made some feature length movies, where you pull your friends together and you do a let's put on a show type type thing. And I've been writing for a while. I did have a script, optioned in Los Angeles, and you talk to folks. Nothing's ever really uh, comes to fruition, such as the life of a writer and artist. But this was one we wanted to kind of call our own number and try to get ourselves out there and try to make it happen.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's something we were talking about earlier, that it's become so much more accessible to make a movie that you don't
Mhm.
need to be in the big Hollywood or Toronto or New York or et cetera, film, Vancouver,
Right.
film industries. And so the question I always like to ask as my final question of the interview is, where do you see the future of independent filmmaking going?
Well, I think it's really exciting. I really, if you look at what Terrifier 2 did in theaters. Like
Oh
it
yeah,
was incredible. It was, and I think, as the Hollywood studio system gets more and more bloated and more, expensive, I think you're going to start to see a lot of these independent films kind of sliding into those theater spots, and because they're more viable, and a lot of times they're more bold and creative, and they're not just a CGI, you know, $300 million, mess. Sometimes you just
yeah,
don't know where to look, and like a lot of the stories are more intimate. Sometimes shocking, and
yeah.
again, there's some audacity to independent filmmaking, and I think I think it's just going to keep growing, and I think it might change the way certain people approach, the business of filmmaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly think that independent films have been and continue to be more creative than mainstream ones. I know that if I want to watch a horror movie where scary stuff happens that is not just a person in creepy makeup and or CGI runs towards the camera really fast while a loud noise plays,
Yeah.
I need to look outside of the studio system.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's wonderful to see independent films like this not only getting a wide release on the internet, which is, let's be honest, where most of us watch movies these days, but also to see them getting a release in theaters. That's fantastic. I hope that you guys are. Actually, what are you doing for the premiere? Are you guys going and having a premiere somewhere? Are you gonna do? Are you gonna like four wall the theater in the town that you shot it in, or?
That's a great question. I don't know yet. We're working on some
Oh,
stuff here in
okay.
Canada. I'd love to be able to do something and see some of the cast and crew again. That'd be a lot of fun. So, it is coming up quickly, so I should probably figure that out. But yeah, I just really hope it most importantly, I hope it connects to an audience. I hope somebody who's like me when they were 12, who would go and rent obscure horror movies, uh, finds it and really digs it, and hopefully it inspires them to try something, or gets them into the horror genre. I just hope, I love being a part of the horror community and the wrestling community, and I'm just hoping to contribute.
Hopefully, yeah. And
Yeah,
I love the idea of some kid who's a little wrestling enthusiast seeing this and realizing, oh hey, I can combine these things that I'm passionate about,
yeah,
and maybe someone else who's got a different passion that isn't wrestling can see this and have the same brainwave, and then we get, I don't know, a chess themed horror movie or something because the kid's a chess
yeah.
prodigy.
Here we go. There's my next movie right there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. I have had a great time.
Well, thank you, Thomas. I have had a great time as well. I'm glad we could share in our press junket freshman adventures together.
Absolutely.
All right.
Once again, Here for Blood is coming out on ScreamBox and in theaters on February 9th, 2024. Is there anywhere else that you would like to direct anybody who's listening to this, like social media, anything like that?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Here for Blood. You can also follow the Cineverse ScreamBox Bloody Disgusting pages, and they'll have updates for you as well.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.